All right. Ooh. So I'm here with
Heather Pillay.
and I'm Josiah, and so I'm going to be interviewing you about. Or my first question is, how were things different back in the '90s, back when you were a little kid, and when you grew up? How was it different from today's, culture?
So I was born in 76. I'm 48. So 1976, I was raised more in the 80s and 90s. I got married when I was 18. That was a very common thing, was a lot of young girls got married when they were 18. And a lot has changed. Of course, we didn't have electronics. We didn't have, goodness. I grew up in Maine, so everything was slower getting up north in the country. I think it was more like we didn't even have cordless phones. We had the phones with the landlines with those little coily little cords. And we were so happy when we had the extra long 20-foot cord because we could walk around and paste connected to the wall. And everything was dial. So it was like the rotary. You had to go all the way around to 9 and it would dial the 9 and come back around. Then you had to dial the 7 and then it would come back around. And I remember it was such a big innovation when we got the push buttons. That was a huge thing.
Which one?
I think I was
On
like
the phone?
10 on the phone.
Oh.
Like the phone was hanging on the wall and you got the push button instead of having to wait to dial because it was so much faster. We didn't have electronics at all. We had TV. Our TV was a big box TV that sat on the floor and it had the case around it and everything.
And the antennas and stuff?
Yeah. We used to have to touch the antenna, and then because I'm the youngest in my family, they used to make me stand there and hold it because if someone was touching it, it would come in. Reception was better. And we had the dial, so we go to change the channels. We had 22 channels, and then you had sub-channels. You had a second dial. Sometimes you could get in a black and white movie in that sometimes. But basically it was, I think, 3 major stations. And
was it like colored? Was it?
Yeah,
like
we had color TV in the 80s.
Just
90s,
making sure.
Yeah.
Making sure.
Yeah. We used to watch a lot of black and white movies. I loved that then. Oh, the clothing was hugely different back then.
The fashion. How was the fashion?
So crazy. You had your bangs, big poofy bangs. We'd curl them, tease them, and have them. The higher the bangs, the more popular you were. Yes, a lot of Aquanet.
Were you a popular girl?
You had yes and no. I was friends with everybody. You used to wing your hair out and then blow dry it and then let it drop so that it was like this when you and your bangs were huge. So you had these 2 wings.
So it was just puffy.
It was just poofy, and then spiral curls came in, and my sister got a perm and it was all spiral. Everyone thought that those people looked like a poodle. Yeah, and then bright colors, neon colors, lots and lots of neon and crop tops and ruffled mini skirts and high heels with socks. We used to roll our socks down, take them like this is your foot, and you take your sock and roll it down so it was a big roll like this. It looked like this with a sock, and you'd wear that with high heels.
That's so weird.
Leg warmers.
Fashion was crazy.
Yes.
Fashion was crazy back
Yes.
then. All right, so my next question is, how was the beanie? Like, tell me more about the
Beanie Babies. Tie Beanie Babies. That was the biggest craze because there were so many different ones, and it had the little heart tag on it, and you weren't allowed to take the tag off because it would be worthless. And everyone thought that 20 years from then, it was going to be this big thing where the more you saved, the more money they'd be worth. But the problem was they made so many of them.
So it was kind of like a collection?
Yes. There were so many of them, and they were so popular that everyone had them.
Like Barbies nowadays and
Yes.
like American Girl.
Yeah, but Barbies and stuff, they have like collection editions where they only make like 50 of a certain kind. Beanie Babies, they made hundreds of every kind. So they lost their value. So
okay.
there's
So are they still around nowadays, or
some people still have like 500 or 1,000.
and are they like worth?
No, they're not
Yeah,
worth any.
yeah.
Probably 25 cents a piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were the cutest little thing, and everyone had to have them. Pound puppies. That was the biggest thing. Pound puppies and Cabbage Patch dolls. I still have mine.
Okay.
Pound puppies were stuffed animals, and they had a little hard
Like
heart
those,
on the
like
butt.
those bears, like those I forgot what they're called. It was like a movie, the bear.
Berenstain Bears.
Yeah, and they had like.
Oh, I had the whole
I
set,
know.
the house, the
I
log,
remember.
everything. That was my favorite show growing up.
Yep.
But the pound puppies, my sister and I used to fight over who had the better one. They were adopted pets, and they came with a little adoption card and all of that.
Yeah.
And Cabbage Patch dolls. Now they are worth money today. And they came out, instead of yarn ones, they came out with a silk one that was like real hair and soft.
So do you still have?
I
one
still
of
have
those?
mine. Yep,
Oh,
I have them in the storage room. I think I have 3 of them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question is, how did 9/11 in the 2000s era? How did that impact you? And like, can you tell me like where you were at and like
Yeah.
how everything went?
I remember exactly where I was. Your dad and I were married for, I think, right at 6 years then. Because we were September 23rd, so coming up on our 6th
So
anniversary.
you're 24. You're
Yeah.
24, right? Okay.
And almost 24. And we had one vehicle. It was my little Nissan Sentra, my red Nissan Sentra, like 86 Nissan Sentra. And I had just dropped your dad off at Radio Shack. He was working there. And then on the way home, I happened to turn on the radio and was listening to the morning show, the news show and stuff. And it said they had to interrupt this program for a special announcement that the Empire State Building in one of the Twin Towers had just been struck by an airplane. And so that was shocking because before in history, people have tried to blow that up so many times before and it hasn't worked. And to hear of a plane crash was very unusual then. And so I remember parking my car, running inside, turning on the TV really quickly and just sitting on and watching the news station. And I saw this smoke coming out of the Twin Tower and just thinking like, oh my gosh. And I was shaking and just praying for the people. And I called Appa, your dad, and said, AJ, did you see and of course, Radio Shack, they had 50 TVs on the wall. And he said, yeah, I'm watching it right now. It's crazy. And as we were talking, the second plane hit.
Wow. So you found out it about what time?
And it was 8:06 a.m.
In the morning.
in the morning.
And then the second one was
The second one, I don't know. I don't remember exactly. It was maybe 9 something, 8:50 something. But I remember seeing it. I was on the phone with your dad. And I remember seeing the tower on live TV. It just collapse. And I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it. I remember just thinking like, oh my gosh, all those people in there.
Yeah.
You could just see people, right? And the person that was videoing it was shaking. And then you just saw the smoke envelop and dust and stuff, I guess it was. But it was crazy because it's just so serene. You're numb to it in disbelief. Because you think of all those lives, all those people that were in that tower that had no chance to get out, and the people in the airplane that died.
Yeah.
It was just so gut-wrenching.
Yeah, so what was your reaction to the other ones?
Well, the one, and then we heard about Pennsylvania, and how the dad called his family and he got the other people to fight against them, and it took the plane down before it hit the Pentagon. And then later on you hear, I guess, I don't know, I was so young then I don't remember the exact time, but it was that they had got Osama bin Laden in the middle of the night and killed him, and it was a big victorious time, a time of relief, because we thought,
America was gonna
that it was
down.
gonna be safe again. We thought that because Osama bin Laden had been captured, that terrorism was done.
Yeah.
You know,
But yeah,
in fact, it
but
wasn't.
sadly it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So how'd you guys go about life, like after all that?
Everybody was so. Maybe there was like an oppression. There was like this heaviness. Everyone was more kind to everyone, and it seemed like everyone you talked to knew somebody somehow that was in the tower or affected somehow.
Yeah.
Impacted somehow.
Yep. Hold on. All right. So the Indian Ocean tsunami, how did that impact you, and like what was going on, and like can you tell me about that?
Yeah, in 2004. I remember that very clearly too, because it actually directly impacted us with the ministry that your grandfather started in India. Some people in South India were directly impacted. It took over and killed a lot of people that we had in churches and we had orphans in house churches with pastors, like 10 orphans to a church, and or 10 orphans to a pastor's home rather. And a lot of those places just got wiped out. Their parents were killed. Yes. And then my mother-in-law, your grandmother, went down to South India and brought back tons of orphans. And we brought them into our orphanage in New Delhi. Oh, okay. And in Gurgaon, actually, just north of New Delhi. Yeah. And we took them in and took care of them. And gosh, they must be so grown now. They're adults now. Yeah, it was really, really hard time.
Yeah,
it was very scary.
Over 200,000 people died and
lost their lives. Yeah, it was really
crazy.
sad.
It's a crazy thing.
All those orphan kids.
Yeah, and you took them in the orphanage, or grandma.
Yeah.
Chief took them in the orphanage and
took care of them, fed them,
and
clothed
brought them into
them,
the home and stuff.
Gave them the gospel, gave them a chance at life.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah.
So the next question is, can you tell me about Y2K and like what was going on with that?
The end of the world.
Yeah, that situation.
The end of the world. I remember. I guess the news outlets started letting everybody know probably in November of 1999, that start getting rations and having food and water, because we didn't know what was going to happen, because we were so dependent on computer systems back then. Yeah. Imagine if that happened now. But back then, and nobody thought ahead far enough to think, well, eventually 1999 is going to turn into 2000, and they didn't create a 20. They didn't create 19 to go to 20. So all this data had to be rewritten, reprocessed, and however the ITs do it. But so I remember our pastor held a special church service, and just having a night of prayer for faith that everything was going to be okay, and that Y2K, God was definitely not going to come on Y2K, because everyone was saying he was going to.
Yeah, everyone thought it was the rapture.
Everyone thought it was going to be the rapture, or the world was ending. And, or that like we were going to be without power, that we were going to be without water, and like things were going to blow up spontaneously. And I mean, people's imaginations were going crazy. Fear, that's what fear does, right? Yeah. And so we had a prayer night, and then he said, don't just, trust the Lord. So what we did, your dad and I, we just filled up the bathtub with water. We went to bed, we woke up, and everything was fine. I let the water out of the bathtub. Yeah, it was a scary time, but everything was fine.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you for letting me interview. All right.